All right, so every 5 years since about 1980, they have come up with the so-called U.S. dietary guidelines. They've updated, every 5 years. They have a committee that meets, and they decide based on the latest scientific evidence, or theoretically the latest scientific evidence, how to frame nutritional guidelines for various institutions. Now, I mean, honestly, it doesn't affect me because I ignore them anyway. They're kind of useless in my view, but it does have an impact on what kids eat in school, what the military's fed, what hospitals feed people, and on and on and on. So it does ultimately impact millions and millions of people, and particularly our children in particular, which is quite concerning. And so the U.S. Dietary Guidelines Committee has announced a couple of things. One is they're not really going to concern themselves with chronic disease. That's not part of their sort of goal for these guidelines, or sort of abandoning that, or not going to take that issue up, even though the fact that the chronic disease epidemic is at literally catastrophic proportions. I mean, we have, 70% of our population is obese or overweight, which again is essentially a chronic disease. We have diabetics, if you add up all the pre-diabetics and diabetics, we've got well over 100 million people that fall in that category. Mental health, the mental health epidemic is out of control. 1 in 4, I think 1 in 4 women now are on some sort of mental health drug. I mean, kids, the kid rates of pre-diabetes, diabetes, obesity is ridiculously alarming. And so to ignore these issues, of which nutrition plays a vital role, is just basically a slap in the face for every American out there. The other thing is, they said they're not going to take up the issue about ultra-processed foods because they say the science is not there yet. Again, they're just kicking that down the curve, trying to ignore that, push it sweep it on the rug for the next 5 years. Remember that most of the Dietary Guidelines Committee members are funded by, they are receiving money from pharmaceutical companies, big food companies, processed food companies. That's clearly a conflict of interest. In fact, the USDA itself, you think about the major mission of the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is to basically sell and promote commodity crops. What are our two biggest crops? Corn and soybeans, right? Where do the soybeans and corn go? It goes into biofuel, goes into animal feed to some degree, but it mostly goes into human ultra-processed food. And if we were to come out and say, hey, we shouldn't be eating all this ultra-processed food, guess who takes a hit? Agriculture, the Department of Agriculture, so on and so forth. So they're not going to do that. They're conflicted about this. There's a conflict of interest, in my view, and this goes out to Mr. Kennedy, President Trump, Harris if she wins. We need to distance and separate the USDA from recommending any dietary guidelines, because it honestly, it's too much of a conflict of interest there. Not only has it been corporate captured, but just the actual fact that they have to promote these commodity crops is a conflict. It is not based upon health. It's based upon selling, crops. And again, I get a lot of people get pissed off. There's farmers in Nebraska and Kansas and, Iowa and Illinois and so on and so forth throughout the Midwest, which would be seriously impacted by this. But at the end of the day, we literally have to address the elephant in the room, and this is this chronic disease epidemic. And yes, it is being driven largely by our food supply. Anyway, let me know what you think. Tag somebody you think would have interest in this, and hopefully we'll figure this stuff out, guys. Take care.